I think get close to your agent. Find good agents that transact in your markets a lot.
A significant change in property is that it's no longer a forever home.
Work from home situations, so they're turning a bedroom into a workspace.
Welcome to Real Talk, realestate.com.au's property news podcast. I want to set the scene. A person has been lucky enough to purchase a property, but in a few years and a few kids later, it's feeling a bit cramped. But now what? What do they do? Today, we're talking about how buyers in 2024 are redefining what a family home actually is and what it looks like. Joining me today is Matthew Everingham from Richard Matthews Real Estate and Hayley Van de Ven from Remax to unpack the issue. Our data shows that on average, Aussies are holding properties for 10.6 years. Let's be real, a lot can happen in 10 years, right? You could go from being single to being a couple. You could go from one kid to three kids and to pets as well. The common conundrum is with low housing supply, it kind of makes the freedom to move around like a lot less when your situation changes so significantly. Matthew, are you seeing families in your patch staying homes that are either too small for them or don't work for their current situations because of limited housing supply?
People are struggling to upsize, or the gap for the upsize is huge. So they've got a property worth X amount to get to the next level is significant. So they often stay, or they're getting pushed further and further out. That's probably what we're seeing a lot of.
Hayley, what about in your patch? Are families struggling to find a home that suits their exact needs?
Yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of people decide to renovate, make some cosmetic changes. I've seen the innovation of some she sheds, where we've had teenagers move out into the backyard instead of, upsizing with their families. So I think people are starting to innovate and, create some really great solutions around that very problem.
Can you give us some examples of ways in which people are compromising?
I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in like a little 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in the country, and it was normal to share a room. And I feel like, there might be a little bit of a swing towards that again, where people are also having work from home situations. So they're turning a bedroom into a workspace and maybe putting the kids together because they just don't have the option or the space that they potentially would have maybe 10 years ago. I remember laughing at my situation and thinking, oh, how cute, like everybody gets their own room and, very different to the way that I grew up.
But I think it's an expectation now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if I said to my kids, you have to share a room, it'd be, they're teenagers. So it'd be at an age where it'd be like, we're not doing that. Whereas years ago, it was pretty common. I think a lot of people also are probably figuring out ways of how they can maximize their space. It could be an attic conversion. Granny flats is a big one in our market.
Matthew, you must see the same families at like multiple inspections kind of in your area and over the years. How long is the longest search that you've heard of for someone who wants to upsize their home?
Years.
Yeah?
Years. 2-3 years. It's a long time.
Why is it not working for them though?
I think initially what their expectation is and what they end up buying is so different. So it takes so long for them to figure out, well, we can't really get what we want, or we might have to move a suburb.
So how are those people feeling?
They're frustrated. Yeah. Rightfully too. It's hard. I mean, to upsize in our market, a client of ours recently, $2 million home he has now, to get to the next level of what he wants is over $4 million. So that's double the value. It's huge. Rates obviously have jumped so significantly, and then the factoring in of that buffer means that people can access less money.
And so what's your advice to those buyers? Are you saying to compromise on certain things? Are you saying to look further afield?
I'm saying that probably the best solution if they need to upsize is maybe they have to move a suburb or two further out to be able to get what they want, because the compromise otherwise is maybe an in-between property. So I think we're going to see people come into the market, smaller apartment, into then maybe a slightly bigger apartment, and they'll start to have to transact more and more and more.
I think that's also another change, a significant change in property, is that it's no longer a forever home, right? My parents have been in the same property like more than 35 years. I don't see that happening to me. Hayley, what do you find are the 3 main things that your families look for in upsizing a property?
I think the yard, we've seen a big swing to in our market, kind of inner city Brisbane and then out towards the east side. there's quite a lot of people that are upsizing to acreage. I think that
So a
has
larger
never
house,
been,
larger property.
yeah, absolutely. That's never been more popular for them to kind of really be chasing that, that space and that fresh air. Literally, you just have more and more people cashing in, downsizing in value, but upsizing in house size.
And what are the other two things you think they'd look for, or they are looking for?
Yeah, I think they're looking for an opportunity to make some tweaks, like, purchase a property that they can do work on, and they can do that slowly, in accordance with their budget, and also, location around schools. Certainly, like anything that's in catchment areas is,
That's
very
a
hot
huge-
option item.
Yeah. I think that really drives buying patterns in our areas as well.
Absolutely.
It's massive.
School year.
Some things that we found people are looking for are those larger homes, as you just mentioned. And if we look at the data around larger houses, so listings volumes in terms of those 4 and 5 bed homes coming to market are significantly less than saying the apartments, the 1-bedders, the 2-bedders, right? Matthew, how are bigger homes coming onto the market in terms of overall listings?
Much less.
Yeah?
Much less. There's not as much stock in that sense coming on. Far more apartments, high turnover in our areas, but much less with a larger home. And the ones that do come on, sometimes they're not even getting to market. They're that popular.
Hayley, what about you? Like, what could you say is a percentage value of the properties that would suit families that are coming on in your patch?
We've got a lot of investors that are leaving the market, and families are purchasing those properties to move into at the ends of the lease. So a lot of investors are selling out 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes. There's not a lot of people that are transacting one for one in their market.
Hayley, how important are schools in the grand scheme of things? I guess, do you have any kind of interesting stories about things buyers have done to get in the right catchment?
We have had experience with both catchments in state schools and then people wanting to live really close to good private schools in our area. I've had every man and their dog ask me to do them up a fake lease so that they can get into a school. And it's quite interesting, obviously that real hunger and you really do see the same state schools pulling those types of catchments. We've got a really small 7 Hill State School catchment close to one of our offices and it's extremely popular.
Yeah.
People are just like hammering to get in there.
And I think people on the lease part of it are happy sometimes to even lease for a period of time, keep their home that they've got and get into those areas.
That's exactly right. Brisbane State High, exactly that. Lots of people will buy a 1-bedder in that catchment
Just
so
to
that
get
they
in.
can have their kids.
We
They've
get a
got
lot
the
of that.
rates notice
Yeah.
and they can have their kids in state school and off they go.
Yeah, wow. Matthew, do you have any interesting stories about your patch about what?
Probably very similar. People asking for property purely just to get into schools. I've seen people transact 2-3 streets away because the border of the school is that close, and they'll sell and they'll move just to get in. It's a huge thing in some of our markets. Probably one of the biggest factors, really.
We're actually also seeing, like even with those 1-bedroom units, like extreme competition. Previously everybody would be like, oh, you're about to list a studio or a 1-bedder.
It's funny how that market has shot up.
It's gone absolutely wild.
Yeah.
And what would you say is the third thing that people are looking for when they're kind of looking to upsize other than schools and larger houses? Because one thing I can think of is probably community.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the community aspect in certain suburbs is fantastic, and you see the pricing differences in those suburbs compared to neighbouring, and a lot of it's down to that.
Are you coming across families who either won't move out of their community or who are willing to go further afield?
We're seeing probably a bit of both. You definitely have your staunch supporters of a community where they're really embedded in the school or in the local community. They might be in the Rotary clubs or they might be, like their friends and their support systems are around them. So they really don't want to move. Maybe they'll move to the fringe or one suburb away, but they're really not gravitating too far. We're also seeing a lot of that urban sprawl as well, where people are, making decisions based on affordability rather than, what's convenient.
Well, I think it's easier to drive to the favourite cafe or restaurant than sometimes paying $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 more in the direct next suburb.
Hayley, what out-of-the-box strategies are you seeing from families to find a property? Because, we've heard stories about buyers like leaving notes in people's letterboxes and just saying, hey, I really love your home. I've got 3 little kids under 10. I'd just adore to raise my family here, like something like that.
what I'm actually seeing a lot of is people going to Facebook community groups and saying, hey, I'm looking to buy.
I see this all the time in my neighborhood.
And I'm like, oh my God, why are you not anonymous? Like the people that are responding are just going to get jammed with real estate agents the next day. I swear to God. I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm seeing a lot of conversations around that as well. So, they'll tag a friend that might be selling soon, or, a lot of reposting of realestate.com ads that, is probably pushing that as well. But yeah, it's quite fascinating how openly sellers are kind of mentioning, I've got a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom in Thornlands. Maybe you'd like that.
If somebody does that, like say post on a Facebook community group, that could spark, like what you just said, oh, hey, I've got one of those of what you're looking for. It can spark someone who's maybe on the fence about selling.
Absolutely.
And you see the responses in those groups often.
They go wild.
Yeah. Great tool for us to try and go in there and grab that listing too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But what about something like a buyer's agent? Matthew, are you seeing families employ buyer's agents?
Yeah, a lot. I think it's probably when the market is racing and it's hot, they turn to a buyer's agent in the hope that they're going to access property before it hits market based on the relationship that buyer's agent will have with agents. I'm seeing buyers connect with us a lot more than what they have before. So really chasing us each week rather than us having to go out and chase them. I see post-auction a lot of owners going up to buyers that have missed out and trying to pitch their property to them.
Like the underbidder?
They grab them, yeah.
Yeah, say someone on the street.
Yeah, they do.
Wow.
Yeah, they do.
What's the success rate of that?
I think the success rate usually is that the agent knows the buyer. In our circumstance, we'll know the buyer so well that they'll end up talking to us about it. And they'll be like, oh, well, we spoke to, John came up the road and chased us down to our car and said he's thinking of selling. So we normally then find out about who that owner is, but it's very common.
What else are you seeing besides, the community groups, the buyer's agents? Anything that I guess 10 years ago we just weren't really seeing at all?
I think you've nailed the main ones, the social media aspect, the online stuff, mainly that.
Yeah, I mean, we live in such a digital world that social media is pretty powerful.
Nobody's safe.
Matthew, what is your advice for families who are currently on the hunt for their next home?
I think get close to your agent. Find good agents that transact in your markets a lot and be upfront, open, honest with them and say, look, this is what we're looking for, and stay in touch with them. I mean, if you're proactive with that agent, I think that you're going to have a much better chance of knowing about that property before it hits the market. And even if you don't know about it before it hits the market, once it goes to market, you're going to have a very frank and open conversation with the agent. So be transparent, be open. Don't be afraid to say, this is what we're after. This is our price point, and keep in touch.
If I could add one thing to what you've just said, I would also say, as well as transparency, is flexibility. So something that I've been learning from agents very recently is that kind of to create the perfect offer for a seller, a lot of it relies on your flexibility as the buyer. And it's not always about the price point. It's about, can you meet their optimal terms? So the example that you gave before about the Joe Blow who chased John down the street, the underbidder, and said, hey, I'm thinking about listing. What, John can do is say, what time are you thinking about listing? What time frame works for you? When were you wanting to downsize? Because if it's a home that this person really loves for their kids, for their family, for the next 20 years, in the grand scheme of life, what is 6 months? What if they purchase it, settlement goes through in the standard 60 days and they go, hey, let's do a lease back. I buy your property, but you lease it back from me until you find your next home. As well as transparency, I'm just learning, flexibility is key, meet someone's optimal terms. Hayley, do you have any advice on top of that?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned previously about the families that are buying rented homes, like properties that have currently got tenants in place and they are flexible enough to wait them out. To give them another 3 months or another 6 months and consider that as an option. Previously, that was something that, no, we're taking any tenants. But now having that flexibility around and a bit of open-mindedness about what the solutions may be, a good agent's always going to have a proactive approach to finding a different outcome to get you what you want. But at the same time, you're right, like buyers just have to be open to the fact that, hey, they might do a 30-day settlement. but they can't get in for another 90 days and they're going to become a very short-term landlord.
And I think most buyers now are far more open to that.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing. Whereas years ago, it was very black and white.
Yeah, it was a no.
Yeah, correct.
Transacting property has just changed so significantly, and the social media example is just one element of that. So I really appreciate you guys coming on today. I think, potential upsizers, if they can take anything from this episode, it's flexibility, transparency, and I guess number one, get on the front foot. The heightened competition is just so rife at the moment that you got to stand out one way or another. And if you're the one who's constantly like in the ear of an agent, they're going to remember you. Thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks for joining me. This has been Real Talk. For your weekly fix, please follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and tune in next time for more real questions, news and insights on the topics that matter most from realestate.com.au, Australia's #1 address in property. All information provided is general advice and opinion based on current market conditions. These opinions should not be treated as investment advice. Always obtain advice based on your individual circumstances.
Real Talk acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, air and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present.